When a Viking warrior died in battle, his wife had exactly 30 days to make a decision that would determine whether she lived as a queen or died as a slave. Historical records show that 40% of Viking women became widows before age 30. Yet archaeological evidence reveals something extraordinary. These women didn't just survive, they thrived. The Vikings had a system so revolutionary that it wouldn't be matched in Europe for another 800 years. This is the untold story of Viking widows, women who transformed personal tragedy into unprecedented power. While their husbands' deaths might have meant destitution in medieval Europe, for Viking women, it often meant liberation. Today, we'll explore the shocking legal rights, brutal survival tactics, and ingenious strategies these women employed to not just survive, but dominate in one of history's most violent societies. To understand the extraordinary position of Viking widows, we must first grasp the unique nature of Norse society. Unlike the rest of medieval Europe, where women were legal non-entities, Viking law granted women unprecedented rights. They could own property, initiate divorce, and even testify in court. Privileges that wouldn't reach other European women for centuries. Meet Ingrid Eriksdottir, a fictional composite based on archaeological evidence from multiple burial sites. When news arrived that her husband Bjorn had fallen in a raid on the English coast, Ingrid faced her first test. According to the Gragas laws, she had 30 days to declare her intentions before the local Thing assembly, or risk losing everything to her husband's male relatives. But here's where Viking society shocked medieval Europe. Ingrid automatically inherited 1/3 of Bjorn's wealth, his wife's portion. This included livestock, silver, jewelry, and even ships. The remaining 2/3 went to their children, with Ingrid serving as guardian and administrator until they came of age. No male relative could simply seize control. Ingrid's first option was remarriage, but not as a powerless pawn. Viking widows chose their own husbands and negotiated their own bride prices. Wealthy widows were highly sought after because they brought established wealth and connections. Some married up, gaining access to higher social circles and political influence previously beyond their reach. Archaeological evidence from the Birka burial grounds in Sweden reveals something remarkable. Many of the wealthiest graves belonged to women who lived through multiple marriages. These weren't victims. They were strategic players who accumulated wealth and influence through careful marriage politics, sometimes outliving 3 or 4 husbands. But Ingrid had another choice, remaining single and ruling her own household. This was revolutionary in medieval times. Viking law protected a widow's right to manage her property independently. She could hire workers, oversee farms, and even organize trading expeditions. Some became regional powers in their own right. Consider the case reconstructed from grave goods found in Hedeby. A woman buried with merchant scales, foreign coins, and exotic amber from the Baltic. The evidence suggests she ran international trading operations, possibly inherited from her husband but expanded under her management. Her grave contains more wealth than most male merchants of the period. Some Viking widows chose an even more dramatic path, taking up arms themselves. The saga of the Volsungs and archaeological evidence from warrior graves suggest that some women led raiding parties to avenge their husbands' deaths or protect their territories. These weren't mythical shield maidens, they were desperate women with everything to lose. Don't romanticize this choice, it was born of desperation. When rival clans threatened a widow's holdings, sometimes the only response was force. Norse law recognized a woman's right to defend her property, and some widows hired bands of warriors or even led expeditions themselves to maintain their positions through strength. Perhaps most importantly, Viking widows served as guardians of their children's inheritance. This wasn't ceremonial, they actively protected their children's futures. Some moved to more defensible locations, others formed alliances with other widows or powerful families. The survival of the bloodline depended on the mother's political skill. Viking society had developed systems to support widows that wouldn't appear elsewhere in Europe for centuries. Wealthy widows often formed informal networks, supporting each other through loans, shared resources, and political alliances. Some established what we might recognize as early women's business cooperatives. Religion played a crucial role in a widow's options. Some chose to become Velvas, wise women who served as seers and healers. This provided both social protection and economic opportunity, as their services were highly valued. The Velva's staff became a symbol of female power that transcended normal social hierarchies. As Christianity spread through Scandinavia in the 10th and 11th centuries, the position of Viking widows began to change. Christian law restricted women's inheritance rights and independence. Many of the freedoms we've discussed would disappear as Norse society adapted to European Christian norms. Let's return to Ingrid. Historical patterns suggest she most likely chose strategic remarriage within 2 years of Bjorn's death. Archaeological evidence shows that most widow burials from this period contain goods from multiple marriages, indicating successful navigation of the remarriage market. This wasn't surrender. It was smart politics. Her new husband, Eric Gunnarsson, brought political connections and military strength. But Ingrid wasn't giving up her independence. She was multiplying it. Her children from her first marriage retained their inheritance rights, while new children would inherit from both bloodlines. She had effectively merged 2 powerful families under her influence. This is how some Viking women accumulated extraordinary wealth and influence. By surviving multiple husbands and managing multiple inheritances, they became powers behind multiple thrones. Some controlled vast networks of trade, land, and political influence that spanned generations. What made the Viking widow system so revolutionary? While contemporary Byzantine empresses might wield power through imperial connections, and Islamic women could inherit under certain conditions, Viking widows operated within a legal framework that assumed their competence and protected their rights systematically. The economic impact of widow independence was substantial. These women controlled significant portions of Scandinavia's wealth and trade networks. Some funded expeditions, others invested in new technologies or land development. Their economic decisions shaped the prosperity of entire regions. Modern archaeology continues to reveal the extent of these women's power. Isotope analysis of bones shows some traveled extensively, likely on business. Grave goods reveal international connections. Tool marks on jewelry suggest some were directly involved in craft production, not just passive inheritors of wealth. Excavations at major Viking settlements like Jorvik, York, and Dublin reveal something fascinating. Many of the largest houses show evidence of female management over multiple generations. Tool distributions, craft areas, and storage facilities suggest women oversaw complex economic operations spanning decades. The sagas, while written later, preserve memories of powerful widow figures. Odd the Deep-Minded led her own colonization expedition to Iceland after her husband's death. Queen Gunhild, Mother of Kings, wielded political power for decades. These weren't exceptions, they were examples of a well-established pattern. Some Viking widows became literal pioneers, leading colonization efforts to new lands. With their inherited ships and wealth, they could finance expeditions to Iceland, Greenland, and even North America. They weren't following their husbands' dreams, they were pursuing their own visions of opportunity. These women developed sophisticated strategies for establishing new communities. They brought craftspeople, arranged marriages between families, established trade relationships, and created the social structures that would ensure their settlement's survival. Their management skills were often superior to male leaders. As Christianity spread, some Viking widows became early adopters, recognizing the political advantages of conversion. They built churches, sponsored missionaries, and used their new Christian connections to maintain influence in the changing world. Adaptation, not resistance, was often their key to continued power. Some widows arranged marriages between their children and foreign nobility, creating international alliances that extended Viking influence far beyond Scandinavia. These diplomatic marriages were often negotiated directly by the widows themselves, making them international power brokers. Paradoxically, as Viking society changed, widows often became the preservers of traditional culture. They maintained the old stories, protected traditional crafts, and ensured that Norse customs survived alongside new Christian practices. They became living bridges between the old world and the new. The legal rights enjoyed by Viking widows created precedents that influenced Scandinavian law for centuries. Even after Christianization, Many of these inheritance and property rights were preserved in local legal codes, giving Scandinavian women advantages over their European counterparts well into the medieval period. Archaeological evidence reveals that Viking widows maintained trade networks spanning from Greenland to Constantinople. Amber from the Baltic, silver from the Islamic world, and silk from Byzantium all flowed through networks partially controlled by these remarkable women. Some widows invested their wealth in technological improvements. Better ships, new farming techniques, improved metalworking. Their capital and willingness to take risks drove innovation in ways that conservative male hierarchies often couldn't match. They had less to lose and more to prove. When diplomacy failed, some widows proved capable military leaders. They understood that their wealth meant nothing without the power to protect it. Archaeological evidence suggests some personally led defensive operations, while others hired and directed professional warriors with strategic skill. Perhaps their greatest skill was building alliances. Viking widows created networks of mutual support that could span generations. These weren't just friendships, they were sophisticated political and economic partnerships that provided security and opportunity for all participants. When external threats emerged, rival clans, foreign invaders, or natural disasters, Viking widows often proved more adaptable than traditional male leaders. Their experience managing multiple crises made them expert problem solvers who could think beyond conventional military solutions. The prominence of powerful widows in Viking society influenced their entire culture's view of women. While other medieval societies saw women primarily as mothers and wives, Viking culture recognized female potential for leadership, business acumen, and independent achievement. Many Viking widows became educators, not just of their own children, but of entire communities. They preserved knowledge, taught practical skills, and passed on the political wisdom they had accumulated. Their schools were often more practical and effective than formal male institutions. Foreign powers learned to negotiate directly with Viking widows, recognizing their authority and influence. Byzantine chroniclers, Islamic merchants, and Frankish nobles all recorded encounters with these powerful women, often expressing surprise at their independence and capability. Statistical analysis of burial records suggests Viking widows often lived longer than their married contemporaries. Freedom from repeated childbirth risks, better nutrition due to wealth, and reduced stress from male domination may have contributed to their extended lifespans and continued influence. As they aged, successful Viking widows developed sophisticated succession plans. They trained younger women in their methods, arranged strategic marriages for their children, and gradually transferred authority while maintaining influence. Their political skills extended to ensuring their legacies. The burial practices for prominent Viking widows reveal their extraordinary status. Some were interred with ships, weapons, and wealth, rivaling any king. Their graves tell stories of lives lived with unprecedented female power and achievement in the medieval world. The Viking widow system offers fascinating insights for modern discussions about gender equality and economic empowerment. These women achieved remarkable independence not through modern feminist theory, but through practical legal frameworks that recognized their economic value and protected their rights. Recent excavations continue to reveal new evidence of female power in Viking society. Ground-penetrating radar has identified probable female-managed settlements, while DNA analysis is confirming that many of the most elaborate burials belonged to women who wielded considerable influence. When we compare Viking widows to their contemporaries in medieval Europe, the difference is staggering. While most European women remained legal minors throughout their lives, Viking widows operated as independent economic and political agents on a scale not seen again until the modern era. What made these women so successful? Archaeological evidence suggests they developed remarkable survival skills, political negotiation, economic management, crisis leadership, and strategic thinking. These weren't innate abilities, they were learned skills passed down through generations of female mentors. The most successful Viking widows didn't operate alone. They created and maintained extensive networks of allies, clients, and supporters. These networks provided information, resources, and protection that no individual could achieve alone. Collaboration was key to their success. Each generation of Viking widows built on the successes of their predecessors, creating an innovation cycle that gradually expanded women's power and influence. What started as emergency survival tactics evolved into sophisticated systems of female leadership and economic control. Even after the Viking Age ended, the memory of powerful widows influenced Scandinavian culture. Folk tales, legal traditions, and social customs preserved elements of female independence that distinguished Nordic societies from their European neighbors for centuries. Today's Nordic countries consistently rank highest in global gender equality indices. While modern factors certainly contribute, historical research suggests that the legal and cultural precedents established by Viking widows created a foundation for women's rights that persisted through centuries of change. Studying Viking widows presents unique challenges. Most historical records were written by men and often overlooked women's contributions. Archaeology provides crucial evidence, but interpreting grave goods and settlement patterns requires careful analysis to avoid modern bias and assumptions. New discoveries continue to revise our understanding of Viking women's roles. Recent excavations in Norway revealed what appears to be a female-led trading compound, while isotope analysis of remains suggests some women traveled extensively for business purposes. Understanding Viking widows requires combining archaeology, history, anthropology, and even economics. Each discipline contributes different perspectives, helping us build a more complete picture of how these remarkable women navigated their complex world. Placing Viking widows in global historical context reveals how unique their situation was. While some other cultures granted women certain rights, the combination of legal protection, economic opportunity, and social acceptance of female authority was virtually unprecedented. The conversion to Christianity marked a turning point for Viking women's independence. While some widows successfully navigated the transition and maintained their influence, the overall trend was toward conformity with European Christian norms that restricted women's rights. Some Viking widows actively worked to preserve elements of their traditional rights, even as society changed around them. They negotiated marriage contracts that protected their independence, established foundations that supported other women, and documented their legal precedents for future generations. The most successful Viking widows developed sophisticated adaptation strategies as their world changed. They learned new languages, adopted new customs when beneficial, and found ways to maintain their influence within evolving power structures. One of the most important legacies of Viking widows was their tradition of mentoring younger women. They passed on not just practical skills, but also the confidence and strategic thinking necessary to succeed in a male-dominated world. While much of our knowledge comes from archaeology, some written sources survived. Legal documents, saga references, and foreign accounts provide glimpses into how these women were perceived by their contemporaries, often with admiration mixed with bewilderment. Modern archaeological techniques allow us to reconstruct Viking widows' lives with unprecedented detail. Chemical analysis of bones reveals diet and travel patterns, while microscopic examination of tools shows how they were used in daily life. The story of Viking widows reminds us that history is full of remarkable women whose achievements were overlooked or forgotten. As new evidence emerges and analytical techniques improve, we continue to discover that women's contributions to historical societies were far greater than previously recognized. When a Viking warrior died in battle, his widow faced a choice that would define not just her own future, but potentially the future of entire communities. Through legal protection, economic opportunity, and cultural acceptance of female authority, Viking society created space for women to thrive in ways that wouldn't be seen again for centuries. These weren't just survivors. They were innovators, leaders, and builders of the world we inherited.